Recapping what the post-nuclear family is, this is my hypothetical system of shared parenting intended to make child rearing cheaper and less risky for the participants, thereby encouraging both more children and more consistently raised children. Now, it can be started quite simply by 3 or more couples producing babies in the traditional way, but choosing to raise them together in a single household, thereby cutting down on expenses. Instead of 2 adults raising between 1 and 3 kids, I propose 6 or more adults raising at least 9 and maybe as many as 18 kids in a single dwelling. There are a lot of other ways a post-nuclear family could get started, but this seems the least radical. That is, it ought to be fairly easy to implement without violating too many norms. You've got parents creating kids just as they normally do. They're just choosing to raise them in a different way. The children are evenly distributed in age from 0 to 18, with no children the same age. This staggering of ages allows learning to flow from child to child and not just from adult to child. In other words, once a child learns something, they can pass it on to a younger child, which can only happen if you have this wide distribution of ages. It wouldn't work if you had all your children the same age because they're all learning at the same rate. But if you have this distributed system, then there's more opportunity for the children to participate in their own upbringing. For example, older children can provide routine care for younger children, at least to relieve some of the burden on the parents. And in fact, I propose that the older children provide nearly all the care for the younger children. To prevent all these parents from getting in each other's way, I propose that none of them actually lives in the household. Instead, they conduct their own private lives, much as they do today, in their own dwellings, coming into the household only for scheduled shifts. Instead of parenthood being a 7-day-a-week job, it could conceivably be a 1-day-a-week job. Now, I'm not proposing that this be a strict schedule. Parents can come and go with some flexibility, but they should also have a schedule that they can rely on. They should be able to know that 5 days a week I can focus entirely on work, knowing that the household is being taken care of. Now, there's always an adult on duty, or nearly always, and there's probably a full-time teacher employed to manage education. But I foresee children performing most of the routine tasks of the household, like preparing meals and cleaning house. I propose that adults never prepare a meal, vacuum a rug, or change a diaper, except to show how it's done. Instead of being caregivers in the traditional sense, adults are more like supervisors, making sure that things get done but not actually doing the work. Adults still provide protection, financial support, and an educational plan, but they are not the cooks and bottle washers. Instead of being parents in our current sense, you might see them more like grandparents or the aunts and uncles of today. I realize this system raises all sorts of questions and challenges, which is why I need to discuss it over multiple podcasts. Optimistically, it might take till 2030 before anyone pays any attention to me and before anyone latches onto this idea and actually considers implementing it. I'm proposing that this post-nuclear family is a permanent institution. It goes on forever because you want to preserve all that knowledge that is accumulated over time. We call it an institutional memory. After you've been raising children for 18 years, you've learned a thing or two, the whole institution has matured, and you don't want to just stop having babies, stop raising children, because then you're wasting all this resource, this talent, these skills that you've developed. So the post-nuclear family is not a charity. Its main mission isn't rescuing the weak or doing good for wider society. Its main mission is perpetuating its culture. Children are the carriers of that culture. The whole family system is funded by a system of family taxes, a sort of tithe that you pay to the family throughout your life. So it's a little bit like a government system. The thing you have to factor in is that the post-nuclear family doesn't just raise children, it also cares for its sick and elderly. If you get a serious illness at any age and can't work, the family is going to take care of you. And likewise, when you get old and infirm. Any family has to work within the regulatory requirements of whatever country they live in. And that's a wild card right now. The family is going to have their own reproductive philosophy, which is going to be present from the time they form the collective. From the time they form the collective, they're going to agree in principle on how we're going to make the babies 20 years from now. And that's something that's negotiated among the members of the family. It is part of their identity. Their reproductive philosophy is part of their identity. The reproductive policy includes where you get your mothers, but it also includes where you get your embryos. That's a policy decision that I don't want to step into, that I'm not going to dictate from afar. Every family has to decide how they're going to select their embryos, how they're going to select the sperm and egg that make the next generation of children. And that's a complicated thing. It's a messy thing. I'm eager to talk about it in future podcasts. So that's my vision.